The reproductive system functions to produce more people, perpetuation of the species. There are different organs in the male and the female. In the male, the essential organ is the testes. This is the organ that produces the sperm. Accessory organs include the prostate gland, the seminal vesicles, and the bulbourethral glands. These glands produce the semen. And in males, we have external genitalia, the penis. In females, the essential organ are the ovaries. These produce the eggs or the ova. Accessory organs include the fallopian tubes, the uterus, the cervix, and the vagina. We'll look at the male reproductive system first. The testes lie outside the body in the scrotum. For the testes to function properly, they have to be at lower than body temperature. The epididymis is a structure just to the side of the testes. Then we have the vas deferens, and the vas deferens comes around and hooks up to the urethra. The urethra goes through the penis, which is the copulatory organ in males. The prostate gland and the seminal vesicles contribute fluids that make up the semen. The path of sperm out of the body is they're manufactured in the testes. They go through the epididymis, the vas deferens, and the urethra. They leave the body through the urethra. The sperm are produced in the seminiferous tubules. These are the tiny coiled tubules that make up each testicle. The sperm are then held in the epididymis. It is here that they mature. They stay here for close to a month. At ejaculation, the sperm leave the testes through the vas deferens. The vas deferens will then connect with the urethra inside the body of the male. Semen is the fluid added to the sperm. It's added by the accessory glands, the bulbourethral glands, the seminal vesicles, and the prostate gland. Semen helps nourish and protect the sperm as they travel to the egg. The fluid is slightly alkaline, a pH of about 7.5. This alkalinity helps neutralize the acidic environment of the vagina. Vaginal pH runs around 3.8. Also, the fluid will contain seminal plasmin. This is an antibacterial. The vagina has a rich bacterial flora, and the bacteria could attack the sperm. And finally, it contains fructose. Fructose will nourish the sperm as they swim toward the egg. Each milliliter of semen will contain 50 to 130 million sperm. Each ejaculation is 2 to 5 milliliters of semen. Spermatogenesis is the production of sperm. This occurs in the seminiferous tubules of the testes. There is a special cell division process called meiosis. The spermatogonia, which are the germ cells for the sperm, are diploid. They have 2 sets of chromosomes. The sperm have to be haploid. They have to have only 1 set of chromosomes. As we make the new individual, 1 set of chromosomes will come from each parent. So the sperm has to be haploid and the egg has to be haploid. Meiosis will take 1 diploid cell. It will go through 2 special cell divisions and will end up with 4 haploid cells. In the case of spermatogenesis, 1 spermatogonia will give us 4 haploid sperm. This process begins in males at puberty and continues throughout their life. These are the cells that line the seminiferous tubules. The spermatogonia are the diploid cells. They can undergo mitosis and make new diploid cells. One of the cells will stay behind so we can make more spermatogonia. The other one will undergo meiosis. So we will have the double cell divisions going on until we get the haploid spermatids. Now spermatids have to undergo some changes. This is called spermiogenesis. We have to remove the cytoplasm, we have to give them a tail, and we have to prepare them for their journey. After spermiogenesis, we will have the mature sperm. Now sperm are basically a nucleus with a motor and a tail. Part of spermiogenesis is growing the flagellum, placing all of the mitochondria in this middle piece, and then protecting the nucleus with a little acrosome. This acrosome will have enzymes in it that will be important when the sperm gets to the egg. Spermatogenesis is controlled by hormones from both the pituitary glands and the testes. The pituitary hormones are follicle-stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone, FSH and LH. The testicular hormone is testosterone. Luteinizing hormone stimulates the interstitial cells of the testes to produce testosterone. Interstitial cells are cells that are outside of the seminiferous tubules. Testosterone and FSH have to work together to stimulate the spermatogonia to undergo meiosis to make sperm. Additionally, testosterone maintains the reproductive system and is responsible for the secondary sex characteristics in males. At puberty, there is a growth spurt that is spurred by testosterone. We also develop a deeper voice in males. It stimulates hair growth, the thickening of the bones, and the muscle development. The prostate gland tends to give males their most problems. The prostate gland can enlarge. There are two basic causes for this. One is BHP, or benign hypertrophy of the prostate, and the other is prostatitis. BHP is something that most males will experience if they live long enough. Prostatitis is an inflammation of the prostate and can occur at any age. As the prostate enlarges, it puts pressure on the urethra. The prostate encircles the urethra, so when it swells, it's going to help close up the urethra. This makes for difficult urination. Sometimes it completely closes off the urethra so that there's urinary retention, and then there are periods of incontinence. Cancer is another problem with the prostate gland. Now, this is a very slow growing cancer, but it is somewhat hidden. It's difficult to find. It seldom metastasizes. Many men will die with prostate cancer, but very few will die of prostate cancer. PSA, or prostate-specific antigen, can be detected in the blood and can be used to monitor prostate cancer. There is some controversy with PSA. Besides prostate cancer, other things can cause an increase in PSA. Most doctors now are checking it, and if they see an increase, they look for overt signs of cancer. If nothing much is going on, they really don't treat that much. They sort of take a wait-and-see attitude. The female reproductive system includes the ovaries, which are in the pelvic cavity, and the fallopian tubes. Now, the fallopian tubes are not directly attached to the ovaries. These finger-like projections are called fimbriae. Eggs will be ovulated into the pelvic cavity, and these fimbriae and ciliated cells on the fimbriae will help suck the egg into the fallopian tube. The fallopian tube is attached to the uterus. This is a pear-shaped organ about the size of the fist. The opening to the uterus is known as the cervix. And then the vagina acts as the copulatory organ in the female and as the birth canal. Ovaries are the essential organ for the female. An ovary is a mass of connective tissue that contains the follicles. The follicles house the immature egg. The follicular cells surround each oocyte. The oocyte is the germ cell for the egg. Women will have all of the oocytes they can produce at birth. Starting at puberty, one of the follicles will be selected for further development. As the follicle develops into a mature egg, ovulation will occur. This is the release of the egg. And then the follicle cells that remain behind will become a corpus luteum. The corpus luteum will continue to degrade and will eventually become scar tissue. The fallopian tubes are part of the accessory organs of the female reproductive system. The fimbriae are the projections that partially surround the ovary. The fallopian tubes receive the ovulated oocyte. Using peristaltic contractions, it will deliver the egg to the uterus. Fertilization occurs in the fallopian tube. The uterus is going to be the organ that will receive, retain, and nourish a fertilized egg. The cervix, or the neck of the uterus, is the outlet to the vagina. The uterus is composed of 3 layers. The endometrium is the innermost mucosal layer. It thickens during the menstrual cycle. When it is thick, it provides a rich nutrient area for a fertilized egg if pregnancy occurs. If pregnancy does not occur, this layer dies and is sloughed off. The myometrium is the middle layer. This is composed of smooth muscle. It functions in labor contractions. And then the perimetrium is the connective tissue outer layer. This helps protect the uterus and anchor it to surrounding structures. Oogenesis is the formation of the female gamete, the egg. All of the oogonia are in the ovaries at birth. The oogonia are the diploid stem cells. Just like the spermatogonia went through meiosis, so do the oogonia. But there is a difference. When we do the cell divisions, only one cell gets most of the cytoplasm. So we end up with 4 haploid cells, but 3 of them are called polar bodies. We only get 1 ovum. So while spermatogonia produced 4 viable sperm, an oogonia will produce only 1 viable egg. At puberty, the ova begin to be released, 1 per month. The uterine or menstrual cycle is the cyclic changes in the endometrium due to changes in hormone levels. The typical cycle is 28 days, but this varies greatly from female to female. Ovulation will occur about halfway through the cycle at day 14. The first half of the cycle can vary greatly in length, but ovulation always occurs 14 days before implantation. There are 3 phases to the uterine cycle: the menstrual phase, the proliferative phase, and the secretory phase. The menstrual phase is the first 5 days of the cycle. This is when the endometrium sloughs off. The average blood loss is really quite small, only 50 to 150 milliliters. 120 milliliters is half a cup. The proliferative phase is the next phase, days 6 through 14. This is when the follicle is maturing and secreting estrogen. Estrogen will cause the endometrium to begin to thicken to prepare for a fertilized egg. Luteinizing hormone will be released at day 14 and ovulation will occur. Once ovulation occurs, we're going to have a corpus luteum. The last 14 days of the cycle are the secretory phase. The corpus luteum is producing progesterone, and progesterone causes the endometrium to continue to thicken to prepare for a fertilized egg. If fertilization occurs, the embryonic cells will produce HCG, human chorionic gonadotropin. This will cause the corpus luteum to be maintained and continue to produce progesterone until the placenta forms. If progesterone levels decline, the endometrium is sloughed. Oogenesis is controlled by hormones as well. The same pituitary hormones are involved. FSH will stimulate the follicle in the ovary to develop, and LH will cause ovulation. The ovaries produce two hormones of their own. Estrogen is secreted by the developing follicle. This causes the endometrium to begin to thicken. It's also responsible for maintaining the female reproductive system and for the secondary sex characteristics of the female. The growth spurt at puberty, breast development, and changes in the pelvic bone, broadening the hips. Progesterone will be secreted by the corpus luteum. This will continue to develop the endometrium. We really have two things going on. We have the pituitary hormones, which are affecting the ovary, and then we have the ovarian hormones, which are affecting the endometrium. So follicle stimulating hormone causes the follicle to develop, and right at day 14 we have a spike in luteinizing hormone that will cause ovulation, and the follicle cells become the corpus luteum. The cells of the ovary are secreting their own hormones. Estrogens climb as the follicle develops, and they are going to affect the endometrium. We start seeing the endometrial layer build. At ovulation, we have a corpus luteum, and the corpus luteum begins to secrete progesterone. Progesterone will cause the endometrium to continue to develop. Now at day 28, FSH and LH will start to climb again if progesterone and estrogen stay low. If estrogen and progesterone stay low, it means that the corpus luteum is no longer functioning, a pregnancy did not occur, and we're going to slough this layer. As we slough this layer, FSH and LH will start to climb because we will begin the process of developing another egg. However, if pregnancy does occur, those embryonic cells will continue the secretion of progesterone. The progesterone levels will not drop, but will continue to climb. This will maintain the endometrial lining so the fertilized egg can burrow in and set up housekeeping. Fertilization is the union of the egg and the sperm. Now, the oocyte is viable for about 24 hours after ovulation, and sperm can survive up to 72 hours after ejaculation. So the sperm could show up a little early and wait for the egg, or the egg could be released first and then the sperm can show up just a little bit later. The acrosomes of the sperm, those little crash helmets they have, rupture when they contact an oocyte in the fallopian tube. This releases enzymes that will begin to erode the covering over the oocyte. The oocyte is very well protected. Several sperm will have to attack the egg to completely penetrate this covering. Sperm that show up a little later have a better chance of penetrating the egg because their previous sperm will have made the hole for them. Only one sperm can enter the egg, and once that sperm enters, there are several protective mechanisms that prevent other sperm from getting in. The cell that is produced when the sperm and the egg nuclei combined is called a zygote. This is the first cell of the new human. The zygote undergoes cleavage. This is rapid mitotic divisions as it travels in the fallopian tube to the uterus. First, it develops into a morula, which is a ball of cells, and then it becomes a blastocyst, which is a hollow ball that contains about 100 cells. Cells of the blastocyst are the ones that produce the HCG. This is the hormone that's detected in pregnancy tests. At about day 7, the blastocyst has been floating around in the uterus for a day or two, and it will attach to the endometrium. This is called implantation. At ovulation, the fimbriae and the ciliated cells will suck the egg into the fallopian tube. Sperm, if they've been deposited in the vagina, will swim up through the cervix, through the fallopian tube, and will find the egg about 1/3 of the way up the fallopian tube. The sperm will fertilize the egg, and cell division will begin almost immediately. So we will have the morula, and then we will have the early blastocyst, and this late blastocyst is what gets to the uterus. This will actually float around in the uterus for a day or two. The fluids in here are nutrient rich, so the blastocyst is well nourished, but it will find a point on the uterine wall where it will attach and burrow into the endometrium. These trophoblast cells are the ones that secrete the HCG. This is what maintains the endometrium until the placenta can form. The cells of the trophoblast and the endometrium develop into the placenta by the end of the 3rd month. The placenta will continue to produce estrogen and progesterone to maintain the pregnancy and will act as the exchange organ between the fetus and the mother. Oxygen, carbon dioxide, wastes, and nutrients are exchanged between the two through the placenta. During the first 8 weeks, we call the developing individual an embryo. All organ systems have begun to form and are pretty much laid down by the end of week 8. After week 9, it's called a fetus. At this point, we simply have growth and development of the organ systems. Childbirth usually occurs within 15 days of the due date. The due date is 280 days from the last menstrual period. So actually a woman has been pregnant for a while before they really start calculating the pregnancy. The exact trigger for labor is unknown. We know that estrogen levels continue to rise during the pregnancy, and this causes the myometrium to produce oxytocin receptors. Oxytocin will have the effect of causing smooth muscle of the uterus to contract. Also, as the estrogen levels peak, it interferes with progesterone. Progesterone levels don't keep up, and part of what progesterone does is to keep the uterine muscles from contracting. Toward the end of pregnancy, Braxton Hicks contractions may be felt. These are weak contractions of the uterus as a result of the estrogen levels rising and beginning to irritate the smooth muscle a little bit. The fetus actually sort of determines when it's going to be born. It produces the oxytocin, which will cause the placenta to produce prostaglandins. Between the oxytocin and the prostaglandins, they initiate labor contractions. Labor is the time from the first contractions to the expulsion of the baby, and it occurs in 3 stages. Dilation is the longest part of labor. This is when the contractions are used to dilate the cervix, to open it up big enough for the baby to come through. Amniotic fluid is released at this time, and this is called the water breaking. Expulsion is the delivery of the infant. Typically, the infant comes head first. Any other presentation, shoulder, foot, hip, is called a breech birth. The 3rd stage is the placental stage. This usually happens within 15 minutes after birth. The uterine continues to contract during this period. This helps compress blood vessels to limit bleeding. The placenta detaches from the uterine wall and is delivered. It's important that all of the placenta is delivered. If some of it is left behind, it can cause excessive bleeding, which may be life-threatening for the mother. In early dilation, the infant's head engages and the infant is facing to the side. As we go into late dilation, the infant rotates slightly and starts to go face down. During expulsion, ideally the infant's head is delivered first. This is the ideal delivery because before the baby is even fully born, the physician or midwife can clear the nasal passages so that the baby can breathe very quickly. Once the baby is delivered and the umbilical cord is cut, uterine contractions continue, the placenta comes away from the uterine wall and is delivered itself. Uterine contractions will continue for a while and the uterus eventually returns back to its smaller size. Contraception literally means against conception, and there are 3 basic attacks we can use for contraception. One is to prevent the egg and the sperm from ever getting together. In the male, we can use a vasectomy. You can cut the vas deferens so the sperm never get out of the male system. Males can use a condom to trap the sperm and not deliver them to the vagina, or there is a process called coitus interruptus. Before ejaculation occurs, the male withdraws from the female. People who use this method are usually called parents. In the female, tubal ligation can be used. This is cutting the fallopian tube so that the egg and the sperm can't get together. Females can block the passage of sperm to the egg by using a diaphragm, a cervical cap, or a vaginal pouch. Spermicides may enhance the effects of any of these methods. The second thing we can do is try to prevent gametogenesis. The pill, the patch, or the implant are used by females, and these are probably the most common forms of birth control. Here you have hormones that trick the hypothalamus into thinking you're pregnant. FSH is never released and so eggs are never developed. So far there has not been a mechanism found that will prevent gametogenesis in males. And the third way is to prevent implantation. This is how an IUD works. It irritates the smooth muscle, making it move too fast so that implantation cannot occur. The morning after pill or morning after procedures are simply high doses of hormones that imbalance the system so that implantation cannot occur.